I got off the phone and I was just in tears. And all of a sudden, I just had this image of myself as a little girl holding my grandfather's hand. I sat down and I wrote a 6-page short story about a little girl named Gracie, whose grandfather has a worm in his brain. And very little of that actual first story was changed. It's mostly all in the book.
Hello, and welcome back to the Book Love Podcast, where we dive into and beyond the pages in front of us. I'm Matt from Ohio, and today I'm joined by the amazing Rachel McRady, an Emmy Award-winning writer and editor. Rachel is a global journalist who has worked for or been featured in publications such as People Magazine, Entertainment Tonight, The Washington Post, Good Morning America, Time, The Huffington Post, and on and on. And if that's not enough, she also released her debut novel, Sunseekers, in 2024. When she's not working in the journalistic trenches or the limelight of Hollywood, Rachel can be found with her husband and daughters in Virginia, where she is likely to engage in heated debates about the Gilmore Girls, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and the genius of Jack Black, which, to quote Julie Andrews, are a few of my favorite things as well. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Matt from Ohio, who I very fondly remember from the Crozet Book Festival.
Yeah, I think there were like two people that like changed my entire book fest experience, and you were one of them. Because I
The
did
other
not
was the
know.
security guard who kicked you out.
No, thankfully they didn't kick me out. Although I thought I was going to be too annoying.
No.
You know?
That's I think commonly like people are, and I was the same way before I became one, but people are kind of like nervous to approach authors. We are not real celebrities. I mean, some authors are, but we are regular people who are like, oh my gosh, did someone like maybe read a book or like consider like checking it out from the library? Like this is like that's the highlight of our week. So someone who comes from out of state to a book festival, like packed to the gills with questions, is our dream. Like that is like sweet, like Mariah Carey said, sweet, sweet fantasy baby.
Sweet
Like,
fantasy, that's right.
I mean, most of the time you're up there and anyone's like, so any other questions? And like people just kind of stare at you. And then you're like, well, this is weird that I like made all these people come here to stare at me and I'm just mute. And like, so that being said, we were very appreciative to have you there and to have someone so engaged and have so many questions. That is an author's dream.
What's funny about that is I had like a legal pad, a yellow legal pad filled with questions that I researched people beforehand and kind of came up with like thematic questions and whatever, and I left it in Ohio. And we drove to Virginia, and I couldn't for the life of me remember any of them because I was nervous to be amongst strangers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then as soon as the first session started, I was like, I'm not amongst strangers. I'm amongst other book nerds. We're all the same. It's great. Um,
Losers in the
but
best way.
for sure.
But anyone who acts otherwise, like I have a problem with, I'm just like, you're not cool. Don't try to pretend.
um, Usually when I get the opportunity to talk to somebody that amazes me, especially an author, like one-on-one, um, tried to walk the conversation linearly through time. You know, like, oh, let's talk about childhood up to becoming an author and then the writing process and life as an author, and then we'll get to the novel. But um, Sunseekers was such a unique novel that I wanted our conversation to be a little bit unique. So, what I want to try to do is I want to try to give some foundation to Sunseekers, and then I want to give some foundation to you, and then I want to bring them all together and talk about the two simultaneously somehow. Okay. So starting with Sunseekers, I think that Sunseekers is it's a very specific book and it's also very not specific at all. I found it to be a very fresh take on some very universally felt concepts. It's sad, it's happy, it's depressing, it's hopeful. It's quite frankly a story I didn't know I needed, and that might be unique to me. Um, I try to boil stories down to give listeners kind of a spoiler-free short synopsis, but I struggled really hard doing that with your book because I kept leaving out things I thought were important in what it's about. So, because I know you've been talking about this book for like almost 2 years now,
You want me to do it?
I
I can
thought
do
I'd
it.
throw the
I
ball at you.
can
Yeah, if you could explain both the plot and the messaging, what is Sunseekers about in your words from your brain?
It follows a 6-year-old little girl named Gracie, who decides to break her grandfather out of his nursing home. He has dementia, and she thinks that she can save him because she's 6 and there's no problem she can't tackle. And so they go off on this great adventure, and that all sounds nice until you think about her parents and the people responsible for her, and the fact that a 6-year-old is out in the world with an unstable guardian. And so it is a multi-generational story that kind of investigates the differences in relationships, grandparent and grandchild, parent and child. It was, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, but it was kind of my solution to grief and to difficulties in my own life, and trying to kind of write a happier ending for the people I loved, who were struggling with dementia. So I liked that you said it was both depressing and hopeful because, yes, there's so many sad realities of a disease like dementia, and a lot of people, like, you tell them what the book's about, and they're like, "Oh, dementia. Okay, that's going to be a downer." But I didn't. That's not what I wanted to do. There are plenty of sad books about medical conditions. I am not in the medical field. I am a person who has people in her life who have struggled with dementia and Alzheimer's and things like that. And so I wanted to show what it was like to love those people, and to also have conflicted feelings about those people. And complicated family dynamics when it comes to dealing with something so serious and so heartbreaking in some levels, but also just a part of the human experience. So that's kind of my long-winded explanation of Sunseekers.
So that's good. I was trying to add in so many other bits and pieces. So I'm glad I threw it at you, but now we can talk about some bullet points. And I want to talk about some of my bullet points because when you started talking about relationships, I'm like, is she reading my bullet points? Like I literally have granddad and granddaughter, mother and daughter, dad and daughter, sisters. Um, One thing I thought with the relationship part of some of the dynamics you touch on is many books I found either go one of two ways with family, right? You have your blood relations, and blood is thicker than water concept. And then you have your other books that go this other way where it's more about found family, and it's um like the covenant and the choice that makes things the strongest. But I found in reading your book that you do both. Somehow the blood relations become sort of a found family as everybody reunites um, to find Gracie.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, is that something that you thought about, or did that just happen organically? Do you think it speaks to the power of choice? Am I reading too deeply into this?
No, I think that at the end of the day, the books that I write don't have villains per se. Like, if you know the PTA characters, that's the closest you're gonna get to a villain in this story, but at a basic level, everyone is a human being, right? So we all are familiar with human beings, for better and for worse. They have like many amazing qualities and things that you can sympathize with, and then they have things that you're just like, why would you do that? what would compel you to make that decision? And so I wanted to kind of explore that and to show like at the end of the day, we're just all human and we're making mistakes at the same time. We're having triumphs. And so yeah, so I in terms of the found family versus like the blood family, family dynamics has always really interested me. I'm not typically like a genre writer, so I don't have like a mystery. No one's getting murdered. I don't have a heavy romance, but or historical fiction typically, but I just I find families and friendships, and it's funny that you talk about the found family versus blood family because the book I'm working on right now is all found family. And so like it's just funny that it went from this like blood relations book to like something that's very different.
Be different, yeah.
Um but yeah, so I think it's just seeing how people interact with one another. Seeing how my relationship with my grandparents was very different from my parents' relationships with their parents.
Hmm.
And I talk about this some, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little with in terms of the siblings. But I'm an only child. My husband's an only child and I have 2 little girls, and so sibling dynamics have always really fascinated me because I've always like, "Oh, well, you'd just be best friends, right? Like, that makes sense." And, like, everyone who's ever had a sibling is like, "You're insane, ma'am." Um, so
You
yeah,
are a little insane. I have 3 older sisters. You're not necessarily always best friends.
yes. So but see, that fascinates me. Like, I could talk to you about that for hours and be like, "But why?" And, like, you've had all these experiences together, and it's like, maybe because you've had those experiences together, that's why. And so that has always really interested me, is exploring the dynamics between people, and when you put them into this really extreme situation, how would they all react, and how would they all interact with one another kind of thing. So, I don't know if it was, like, conscious of, like, having it be, like, a blood versus found, but I knew that in order for Leanne, the mother, to for you to really connect with her, she had to be start off the story pretty much alone.
Mhm.
And so how do you get to be alone? You can alienate people, you can have a difficult family life. All of those things can happen. And so I wanted to kind of explore all the different routes that that could take.
Speaking of routes for exploring relationships, you tackle some pretty seemingly simple because we deal with them in our everyday life, but really when you start thinking about them, they're pretty complex concepts, right? You talk about dementia, but from multiple age groups and perspectives, divorce, single parenting, financial struggle, grief, negative self-image, clicks. Oof. That one hit hard, I'll be honest. And so I guess all those different labels and lenses, right? Thinking of you as a journalist and being able to talk to other people and think about your book and the combination there, do you think uh, people are put into groups or categories? Or do you think that we label ourselves? Or is it not that straightforward?
I think it can be both. I think early on when I first started writing, I would be like, okay, this is the zany best friend, and she does zany things. Like, and it's such a two-dimensional, kind of boring way to look at people, to be like, "Oh, well, she's the sad one," or "She's the" like, just giving them a label and immediately attaching it. But at the same time, if you're like Leanne and you're living by your like, with a child and no one else to talk to really, and, like, your existence is what it is, you're telling yourself the same thing about yourself day in and day out. You're saying, like, my terrible ex-husband or estranged husband did me wrong. Like, I'm in the right. My life is over. My life is miserable. Without my child, there's nothing else I have in the world. And when you tell yourself a certain narrative for long enough, it becomes the truth. So, I mean, it's kind of a combination. So, no, I don't think she's just the sad, bitter, um, single mother, but she has kind of developed a lot of those traits along the way because that's the narrative she's given to herself.
It's interesting to hear you say some of that because earlier in 2025, I kind of forced myself to I was thinking about what manifestation is, right? And uh especially as a dude in the Midwest, manifestation was always this like very hippie, like granola concept where if you think about having $1 million hard enough, one day it'll be in your bank account, right? But what I started thinking about was it's really just positive self talk because if you don't believe you can do something, you'll never even try, right? And then I go off to the Crozet Book Fest and I meet all of these authors and read, I don't know, at this point, 6 books that all back up that theory. And it's the first time that anybody had backed up that theory that I just thought of on my own, which is not a new or unique theory, you know? Uh, so I'm curious, what led you to finally find that concept? Was it something that happened in your personal life, or was it while writing Sunseekers? Or
Manifesting?
yeah, because Leanne has a very palpable shift
Mhm.
where she goes from very negative self-talk about herself and others in her life to letting go, thinking of them and herself as better, things like that. And there's a perspective shift across the book. And I can't help but think that she begins to manifest a better life.
I do I do agree with you in terms of the self-talk aspect of it. It's funny because being an author and also, I hate this phrase, but content creator, on the internet, it's the cringiest thing.
Uh-huh.
But being someone who's, like, making videos and having that was something that I really had to, like, learn to do. Prior to publishing the book, I just posted pictures of my kids on the internet. Like, I no one knew really outside of my, like, very close-knit circle that I even wrote things. They knew I was a journalist, and I do that for my day job, but nobody knew about novel writing and things like that. And so when it came time to publish the book, I learned a whole new set of skills, which was you have to market yourself and put yourself out there. And when people search your name, they have to come to a page and look at it and go, oh, I know what this is. I understand. Like, she's an author. She's got this book and these are her influences and all that kind of stuff. And so I had to start thinking of myself as a brand, which was very strange. And I very much like had an identity crisis of like, I don't want my face on the internet as much as I feel like it I grew up in the 90s. I'm a woman. I have body image problems. Like, just don't make me like take selfies in my 30s. Like, I'm just it's not. But at the same time, I very much was like, "You know what? Like, the 10 people who are gonna look at this and say like, oh, gross, like, she's so full of herself,' versus all of the new people who would be introduced to a story that meant so much to me and that I thought could help others and impact others, like, it doesn't equate. Like, you have to go with the thing that makes the most sense." And so in terms of, like, the self-talk, like, I see so many videos of, like, authors or content creators going like, "I'm manifesting this in 2026." I'm like, I would love to have that level of, like, "Yeah, let's do it. Like, I can just make this happen." Like, I'm too self-deprecating to ever be able to, like, make a video like that. However, I very much in the past year or so have really kind of come around to the idea of like speak something out loud if you want it to happen. So to take a real peek behind the curtain, I've spent like a year and a half trying to get my second novel published and just getting super close and then didn't work out and then super close and I was just like, this is so frustrating. I've like built a community of author friends and readers and things like that. And like I'm on this platform being like, "Hey, read my book that came out like forever ago." And like being in the book world, like books are coming out every like
Oh
5
my
seconds.
gosh.
So
Yeah.
it not only is like the demand so big and like people are just like, "Oh, like I the new Emily Henry's out. Let me like gobble that down." And like Taylor Jenkins Reid hasn't like there's so many books to read, but then as an author you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm still here. Like please don't forget me." Um and so like knowing behind the scenes that like things were taking a long time, I finally one day sat down and I was like, I would like to publish a second book. And I just like said it on my couch and I was like, please make this happen. And I was just like that, and I was like, that feels dumb. I feel stupid. And 4 hours later, I got the call that I was getting an offer on the second book. And I was like,
Woo!
am I a witch? Is this? So now I'm very much like, I will speak things into the universe. And you know that spent the final week of the year trying to finish another project that I had been working on. And it was driving me a little bit insane. Like I was very like tunnel vision, but also like, am I still breathing? Are words still words? Um, and I during that time, I was
Harvard
like, I've
store.
gotta, like, keep going, and so I sent an email to myself, and I scheduled it for January 1st of 2027, and I said, like, in the email, I was like, "You will finish this book, and I am very hopeful that you will have an offer on this book by the time you read this email." And that's, like, my version of, like, manifesting, if you will, where it's just like we're gonna think positive thoughts and we are going to hope for the best. I always say hope for the best, expect the worst.
Yeah.
I'm a
Then all
worst case
surprises are
scenario.
good ones. Yeah.
So that yeah, and so I think with like characters as well, and in any kind of story, like if they're just down and negative the whole time, it's like, good lord. All right, okay. We get it. Life's tough. Get a helmet. But at the same time At the same time, that's really real, like, a lot of people get really stuck in that mindset, and I'm number 1 guilty of it. Like, I people always say, like, I keep moving the bar where it's like, "Oh, well, I just need to, like, get this one book published." Well, it got published, and it's like, "Oh, well, like, now that I'm in it, I need, like, the second one, and I need, like, more reviews or readers and, like, all this stuff," and it's just, like, it's good to keep being ambitious and it's
Yeah.
good to have goals and things to work for. Otherwise, you don't have a feeling of fulfillment. But at the same time, you can also turn that around and say, I published a book. I did this thing. And so I try to do that as often as I can. I can't say that I'm a professional at it. But I think that the positive self-talk thing is something that's really important for a lot of people because it's tough out there for everybody, like in every field. So if you can't have like a few moments of hope and positivity, then you're going to have a pretty sad existence. And that's not something I want to do.
I guess pivoting away from positive self-talk. That's a really bad segue, Matt. Um, I found the way that I connected with Sunseekers to be different from any other book that I've ever read.
Oh,
Usually, you connect with books through personal experience, personal empathy, that kind of a thing, right? And mine was much more like personally adjacent, right? I didn't really think of myself at first. I thought a lot about my mother-in-law. When I started dating my now wife, I watched her mother become her mother's primary caretaker at home and then at a home, as dementia. Well, dementia didn't start taking her. That probably happened a long time ago and nobody knew. But anyways, I guess in some respects it worked out for me because Mamo just thought that we were married. and I'd been dating this girl for like a year and a half. So that it kind of worked out for me. But I think I was too blinded as a 20 something to fully appreciate what was going on in their family. And I suppose that if I was to personally empathize with a character, I've really empathized with Paula because of that tangential connection. Um, and I mean, it's not about me. So I relate my experience because I'm curious if, as a reader and an audience of your novel, am I unique, or how, like, do you hear a lot from people like this? How far reaching has your audience been? Is it anything that you ever hoped or expected it to be?
I think the majority of people who come to the story come as someone who has been a caretaker or who knows a caretaker, someone who has had dementia in their family or in their lives. Um, I came to the story as slightly less jaded Leanne, but I wanted to be Gracie. So I had 3 of my 4 grandparents had dementia, and I was very
3 of 4?
close. 3
Wow.
out of 4. I was very close with my grandfather, who I called grandfather, and his name was John, nickname was Big John, so that everyone was like, "Well, who are the characters in your life?" And I'm like, "Well, he was basically my grandfather." It was very much like very little fiction there. Um, and I am not Leanne, though, and my husband really likes me to clarify that, like, he never cheated on me and left me for another family. He's like, "Can you please just, like" but yes, so I had moved to London, in 2016, and I was there for 3 years, and in the first year, I was very isolated and alone. I was there with my husband, but he was going into an office every day. I work from home. I didn't know anybody. I am very extroverted, and so every day I'd get off of work around 2 o'clock, and I would have nobody to talk to except for my French bulldog, and he is not the wittiest of conversationalists. And so I would started calling my grandfather, and he was in a nursing home in Richmond, Virginia, where I now live. And he too had just been moved from Tennessee, where he'd lived his entire life. His wife of 73 years had died a few months prior, and they moved him and the whole life he knew to live in Virginia to be near his only living child, my father. And so he was the just like Big John, the life of the party. He didn't walk into a room with a single stranger. He like every restaurant like would just fall over himself to compliment the wait staff and my goodness, like this woman's a saint. This woman is this, and this man is the greatest maitre d' that I've ever. Like it was just you couldn't get anywhere without Big John saying some sort of like over the top ridiculous phrase about everyone around him. Like every meal my mother made was the best meal he'd ever had.
Of
And
course.
so, yeah, and so I would call this person who my whole life I'd known as kind of this mythic, larger than life figure, and he was a very depressed man. He was had nothing really left to live for, he said multiple times. He was 89 and just kept saying, "I'll make it to 90 and then I'll go." And I was just like,
Mm.
That's really hard for me to hear." And you were kind of talking about being like the Paula and being on the outside. I was in my 20s and very few of my friends had experienced someone with dementia. And um, I was going through this kind of like major grieving process of like the person that I knew, and I was grieving him while he was still alive. Um, and I didn't really have anybody to talk with about it. And one day I was really sad and lonely, and I called him to kind of hopefully cheer me up a bit. And the conversation went a really different way. And he was very nasty, just saying things that my grandfather that I knew would never have said. And so it was a real toughie. And I got off the phone and I was just in tears. And all of a sudden, I just had this image of myself as a little girl holding my grandfather's hand. And we wasn't in a nursing home. We were out in the sun and we were having the best time. And I sat down and I wrote a 6-page short story about a little girl named Gracie, whose grandfather has a worm in his brain. And very little of that actual first story was changed. It's mostly all in the book. But I finished it and I kind of like sat back and nothing, I'd never done anything like that before. Like that's not something that like, that's not a common tool I use to like cope with things. Like it just came out of me fully formed. And I just kind of looked at it and I was like, I don't know what just happened, but this seems like something important. And, I had a author friend of mine who we'd had a lot of discussions about, like, because I had written another book that no one will ever read, that was all about a young girl moving to New York from the South after college and, like, finding her way, and who else moved to New York from the South after college and found her um, so I had had a lot of conversations with her about, like, write the story that's your story, and I sent it to her and I was like, "I don't know what this is, but, like, can you tell me if it's anything?" And she replied and was like, "This is your story. Like, this is what you need to write, and you need to turn it into, like, a novel." And so, kind of with that, like, confidence of having someone say that back to me, I moved forward from there. Um, but at first, the book was all written from Gracie's perspective because I very much wanted kind of to live in her head where something that was so upsetting and heartbreaking, like dementia and a disease, I could view it through her eyes, where it's just something we got to figure out. Like it's not this like life-ending terrible disease that takes over. It's just we have to figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah.
And
Let's talk about Gracie's perspective really
yeah,
quickly.
yeah, that was
Um,
where it came from.
well, I guess before I get there, I have a segue-esque question. Has anybody ever asked you or compared Sunseekers to or um, put it out there into how it relates to the bigger world of pop culture?
Do you mean like comparable titles or like what do you mean?
Movies, TV shows, cartoons, other books, anything.
I often compare the voice at least to The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, which is a young adult novel. It became really popular. It ended up being a play on Broadway in the West End. Um, that's all told from the perspective of a boy with autism.
Mm,
So he's viewing the world through like a very different lens. And I read that book. It's a beautiful book. I highly recommend it. But and always really liked how the voice came out. And I think especially when you're writing in first person, you have to have really clear voices for your
yes.
characters. And so that's often a comparable title that I bring up. I also, for people who maybe don't read as often, I talk about TV shows like Parenthood and This Is Us, which don't tell anyone, but I have not watched This Is Us. But basically, just like heavy family dramas that show the perspective of all different types of family members.
Okay.
Um, and that's kind of where I go to comp wise.
This is gonna be fun. Okay, I've got three. I've got three, and mine are comparable insofar as um, rhetoric, not necessarily subject matter. So if you get offended, please tell me, and we can shut this stuff down.
It takes a
But
lot to offend me. I wouldn't worry about it.
okay, specifically, here's the segue into Gracie's point of view. I knew I was going to get there, right? Um, Gracie, and I don't know if you meant to do this or if it just happened because she's 6, but she has very, very strong stream of consciousness narration. And I love it. And I think the only other book that I've read where the stream of consciousness is so strong and memorable was Catcher in the Rye.
Oh, all right.
Obviously, Gracie is not Holden Caulfield. She's
Hey,
much
Catcher
younger,
in the
much
Rye,
more innocent.
my favorite high school book, so I will take it.
Um, so I have told people in my personal life that if they liked that type of narration, they'll love this because it is, well, Gracie is innocent. She's naive. She's pure, you know? Was You mentioned that that was a conscious choice. Um, did you know that Gracie was going to end up commenting on the larger world when you started this? Or was it just that she was going to be commenting on and trying to get to the bottom of the worm in the brain?
I mean, I think that commenting on the larger world kinda comes with the territory, right? So, you can't have her have a stream of consciousness where she only thinks about dementia all day, like, that's not her
I
whole
mean,
day.
you could
You
have.
could,
We would have a different conversation about a completely different book, but you could have.
yeah. So, I kind of it's so funny because everyone's like, "Oh, like, did being a mom help influence?" I didn't have kids when I wrote this.
Oh, well, damn it, Rachel. You're like reading my notes. Go on, keep going. I love it.
And it's really funny because I actually unknowingly gave birth to Gracie. Like, my six-year-old, the way she talks and the questions she has, like, it during the, like, initial, like, book tour I did, she was asking me questions that, like, Gracie asks on the page, not like, when we were not discussing the book at all. And I was are you well? What's going on?" And she would be like, how does the sun come up and down each day?" And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so like, what world are we in right now?" But yeah, so I that all like, the stream of consciousness and all of that, like, that very much came from my weird brain, and not from actual children. There
Very convincing,
Thanks.
like
Early
effortlessly
on, I
convincing.
decided that children would never use conjunctions, so I was like, "Cannot," and, um, I, like, never for some reason wanted to use an apostrophe. I don't know why I thought that's how children spoke. Again, I was in my 20s and did not have children. And someone read it and like, I really like it, but you're gonna need to like put words together a little bit. And I was like, okay, all right. So I had to like go back and like revisit that a little. Another comp that I don't often bring up because people associate this book with like very dark, like intense, is the book and movie Room,
Okay.
which is all told from the perspective of a 5-year-old who's being held captive with his mother. Brie Larson won an Oscar for her performance in the movie version, but that book is very similar in that it's all told from the little boy's perspective, where he's seeing very intense things happening and making sense of them, like in his way. And as a reader, you understand what's going on, but the character is kind of still in that like innocent world where he doesn't really know like the depth of what's happening, and I liked that, so I kept it.
I feel like Gracie has a lot of really good lessons that you can take away that
She's wiser than
she
all
just
of us.
she just throws out there and keeps going, right? They're like these throwaway comments where you and I as adults, we would like feel like we just had this great big epiphany and we want to throw it out there and get everybody's reaction, right? Um, since you mentioned
She would
that
have been
you're
really big on Twitter if she'd been of age, you know?
uh, yeah, before Twitter, let's not go there. Since you said you ended up giving birth to a Gracie, has your daughter, are there any lessons that you've learned from your daughter that have stuck with you? Any um auspicious moments?
I mean, I think this is, like, such a trite thing that, like, all new parents say to, like, people or parents say to people who are about to become parents, but everything is so temporary. Like, something that is the end of the world with a kid 1 week is, like, not a big deal at all. The next week, it's I mean, it both, like, breaks down your brain to the point where you're like, "I don't I I'm dumber because I had you." And also, like, really keeps you on your toes, and you're, like, constantly like, "Okay." So, like, I think she was, like, 3 or 4, and we drove past a building, and she was like, "What's that?" And I was like, "Oh, that's a church." "What's a church?" And I was like, it's a place where people worship God." "What's worship God?" And I was like, "It's 8 in the morning." Like, I fully cannot be having this conversation right now. Like, I'm not ready to talk about, like, higher beings. Like, I haven't had coffee yet. Like, please. And so, like, you just, like, things like that where you don't even think about them as an adult, and then, like, that happens. But now with my second one, she's 3, uh, she is a totally different, insane Tasmanian devil of a child. And whereas my eldest is very, like, introspective and emotional, she's like, "I don't care what your rules are. I don't care if you're sitting on the floor crying because I'm not listening to you. Like, I will burn this house down if I feel like it." And so, like, but at the same time, like, because I have had the first one and gone through that with the first one, I'm like, "It's temporary. Hopefully, she won't actually burn the house down. We hope." But,
We
like,
hope.
no promises. So, I mean, yeah, I think that just kind of I am and was such a regimented, organized, scheduled person. I can't be like that. Like, you can have, like, routines and schedules, but, like, one day, like, kid's gonna come home and not be feeling it, and you just have to, like, be able to
Roll with
go
the
with the flow a
punches?
little more,
Yeah.
like, let it happen, and that was a tough lesson to learn, but one that I'm still working on.
Gotta be honest, I thought through the lovely world of Instagram that your children were slightly older than they are.
Well, they're very tall. They're,
There you
like,
go.
99th percentile height.
Okay. That must
Um,
be alright.
I wish
Um,
they'd mature a little bit, like, not burn down the house, but yeah.
can I just say I also appreciate the homemade costumes and the, like, low-key events that you go to, like, like, it's very similar to, like, how I grew up, maybe how you grew up. It's not this perfectly curated
I do not have a
high-end
beige boy
lifestyle
now.
online.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm very lucky in that I have a husband who, is very keyed into, like, we're gonna have memories and experiences, and, like, we're gonna make it magical as fuck. And so, like,
Hear that.
we're constantly like, he does a great job at Christmas time of, like, decorating the lights in the front, and, like, at Halloween, we have all the blow ups and inflatables in our front yard, and just things that I mean, he had like, that his parents are like that, and my parents were very much, like, experience based, so my mom loves the theater and would take us and takes my daughters now, to the theater, and, uh, my dad wrote when I was growing up, so I was very used to that, and, like, reading was a big thing, so, like, we try to incorporate things that we've learned, but also, like, things that, like, are fun, like, the world's not really that fun right now. Or, for a while now. And so if I wanna wear an insane outfit and go look at a nostalgia something, like, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna take them
Yeah.
with me, and they're gonna get to play, like, a Pac-Man and Nintendo Switch if they want. Like, it just, like, do, like, all or PlayStation, and just do, like, the things that brought me joy as a kid. Because that's, like,
Yeah,
all I have
Rachel.
to go off of, right? Like, I don't know
I
how to,
think
like
I think we're best friends. I think that's what's happening here.
I'm fully open to it, Matt from Ohio. No problem.
Um, by the way, did you make the Matt from Ohio thing a thing? Was that you?
Did I? Um, you introduced yourself that way at the
Well,
book.
yes, I did because before the first session,
And
everybody
so
was
I
so
just assumed
surprised that I was
your
from
last name
Ohio.
was from Ohio.
So I just stood up and as a little inside joke for the tables that I was near, I was like, I'm Matt from Ohio. And they all chuckled. But then as the day wore on, people just started coming up to me like that. And then at the end of the day, Flannery was like, oh my God, are you Matt from Ohio? I'm like, how is this a thing? But
I
I've
mean, I
made it a
did
thing
tell
online
Flannery
now.
about you. Flannery is one of my favorite people in the world. She is the whole reason that there is a community of Virginia authors that gets together and knows each other. She is the coolest. And she also has this like hilarious thing where like people love going to her events and her store, but every time she gets worried, like she's like, "Oh, no one's going to show up. Like it's going to be terrible." And she was really nervous on the day of the festival that like the authors are going to be upset. Like the people wouldn't come. Like people would be upset. And I came down and I was like, Flan, it's totally fine. A guy came here from Ohio and like he like has all the questions in the world. Like this is amazing. Like that's how I reassured her was with your sheer presence. So
Well,
that that should be a huge compliment.
you're, I suppose as somebody that's trying to become more gracious with compliments, you're welcome.
That
Um,
that was my New Year's resolution last year was to be less self-deprecating and more like, "Thank you for saying
Thank
that to
you.
me. I don't wanna die inside. Thank you."
I appreciate it. I just was there and I found my people for, I think, the first time. Like,
Come
took,
on to Virginia, Matt from Ohio.
yeah, we are there. Well, my wife and I, we are there a good 4 times a year, especially specifically around Charlottesville. Um,
Yeah,
so speaking
awesome.
of road trips, uh, and Gracie, the second pop culture thing I have for you.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the movie Little Miss Sunshine?
Yeah, and
Good.
that's
Okay.
also one that
Okay.
I've compared before too, yeah.
So, like, for anybody listening who's not familiar with it, I suppose we could ex- uh, extrapolate a little bit and say that it's about a child's actions, love, and life, ridding the adults around her of their estrangement from the world and each other, and bringing everybody back together.
Yeah,
Which I feel as
very
though,
poetic way of saying that. I mean, yeah, she, like, does, like, a strip dance at the end, but yeah.
yeah. Um, so with the exception of Corinne and the PTA moms, which we'll get there, you wrote a cast of very developed and complex characters. Like, as you mentioned earlier, nobody's wrong, nobody's right. If this was a fantasy novel, we could say that everybody is morally gray, right?
Mm, yes.
Um, but they're not morally gray, right? Because like you're in Leanne's head, and her estranged husband is just like a jerk, but then you're in his head, and nope, Leanne's you know what I mean? So, um, but I would like to put you on the spot, even though you said earlier there are no protagonists or antagonists. If you had to choose, who is the protagonist of Sunseekers and who is the antagonist? Um, and more interestingly, have you heard from your readers? Have they drawn battle lines along this front?
It's so funny. The number one most surprising thing, which I kinda love, is that people love Dan. Like, I was like, "Oh, like, the cheating estranged husband, ex-husband," but, like, I'm a journalist, so until the divorce is finalized, it's estranged husband. Um, but, like, no one's gonna like him. He was the last character that I brought in for, like, to write from his perspective. Before it was just Gracie, then it was just Gracie and Leanne, and then it was, like, it was so short, it was like a novella, and I was like, "I need something else," and I decided to write from his perspective, and I was really nervous about it because I was just like, "I I don't know if you know this, but I am a woman, and I'm not a man, and I don't." Like, I went to my husband and was like, "I don't how do I make man words?" And he was like, "Well, Rachel, he is a human being and a person, so maybe just write it like that." And it sounds so simple, but, like, in my brain, I was just like, short-circuiting. I was like, I don't and then when he said that, it was very much like, "Oh, yes." And, like, everyone so you may not feel like the main character or whatever, like, main character energy of your own life sometimes, you always have reasoning as to why you do things, and you are always in the right in your brain for the most part until someone convinces you otherwise. Otherwise, you are a sociopath. So, knowing that I was not making him a sociopath and that there were reasons for why he did what he did, I kind of wrote from that perspective, and I felt like I had done it right when I said to myself, I was like, all right, I said to my friend, I was like, is he too sympathetic? And she was like, the guy who cheated on his wife and started a new family, no, I think you're okay. And I was like, okay, just checking. And but I have had so many people say that they are just all about Dan. And I find that to be fascinating. In terms of who the protagonists and antagonists are, I think the protagonist, I mean, I don't know. It depends on how you're defining protagonist. Cause like the main character to me is Gracie. The protagonist to me is Leanne. And the antagonist would be John, the grandfather.
Wasn't expecting that.
I mean, I don't, because with Leanne and Dan, I don't think that one is necessarily in the right. I think one made some really bad choices, but I tried to make it so you could see why and you could understand that perspective. And kind of talking about you feeling like the Paula, he had never had an experience like the one Leanne had where he lost someone so close to him and he had such an overwhelming grief. So he did not know what to do. Like he didn't know how to handle it. He felt completely on the outs. He did not feel like he was wanted or a part of anything anymore. And of course, he made a terrible decision in how he handled it, but I understand why he did what he did. So to me, John is the one who pre-dementia made some decisions that thing.
Okay.
So I'm not blaming him for his actions in that regard. I'm saying in terms of how he raised his children and how they saw the world, how he spoke to them, how he, because obviously dementia can make you have different temperament than you did, but in his case it wasn't that far off. The kind of like, I'm in charge, I'm the man here, you should all be catering to me kind of thing was kind of a through line for a lot of their childhood. Mm. And it presented in different ways, but I would say that he was more of the antagonist in that regard.
I was totally thinking of the version of John after Gracie busts him out of the big house.
And that,
And
yeah, I mean,
I wasn't even considering all
yeah,
of the retrospectives that we get on him, and that makes a lot of sense.
you just
The
thought I was a monster. I get it.
yeah, the yes, clearly you're a monster. Such a monster. Monsters wear sweaters. Uh I think the I'm a man, everybody caters to me type of mentality is very realistic, if I'm being honest, of that, especially of that generation. And I found Leanne's I need to be a completely self-sufficient individual to be an extremely realistic trait of the millennial generation as a whole. I know that's something I've battled with a lot. Um, where so Dan's not your husband. You're not Leanne in of herself. Was Paula one of the incidental organic creations when writing that I think that you spoke on a little bit at the book fest, or was there an inspiration for Paula?
Leanne to have someone in her life who maybe would be there for her, but she never could ask. Um, And once she did ask, it like presented itself where it was like, this was here all along. You just never made yourself vulnerable. You never like confided. You were so focused on your own drama and the PTA moms and what they were thinking of you that you didn't take a second to think about someone who actually could be there for you and could care. So I kind of wanted that to be her like smack her in the face, like, wake up, like, check this out, because I've definitely been guilty of, and that's actually my next novel is coming out in 2027, and it is all about adult female friendships. And I've been guilty of the like getting so hung up on like, why don't they want to be my friend anymore? When I had perfectly incredible friends who I was just like not giving the time of day to because I was so focused on the like the negative side of things. And that's kind of Paula Paula's there to show like, yeah, sure, Paula could have been a little bit more like, "Hey, could I help you? Could I do this?" But like you said, we're so like wired to not ask for help, to not want these things. And so I give the example sometimes of one time I was in a very minor car accident and I ended up in the middle of the street outside of my house, and I had just been very badly injured, and I the car stopped and a woman was walking by with her dog, and she said, "Are you okay? Like, do you need someone to call you?" Or do you need me to call someone? And I said, "No, I'm okay." And she walked away and I passed out, and my husband found me passed out in the car and, like, called an ambulance. I was like, "This is how I'm gonna die," is, like, being like, "No, it's fine. No, it's good." Yeah, and, like, it's because we just, like, "Oh, I don't wanna be a bother. I don't wanna cause this issue." Like, I wanna be able to handle everything, but sometimes, like, the as they say on Buffy, the strongest thing you can do is ask for help. Um it's true. I mean, you don't ever want to because you wanna seem like you can do everything, but
Yeah, you wanna seem like you got your stuff together, you don't wanna be an imposition on anybody else. God forbid anybody be impacted by anybody else in this crazy overpopulated world we live in.
yeah. So, that's, again, how I'm gonna die, is me being like, "No, it's fine. Go on."
It's fine. You're good. You can always call me.
Yeah.
I'll give you my phone number later.
Just a quick jaunt from Ohio.
Yeah, just a quick jaunt, and I'll be somewhere, more than likely that I'd prefer to be anyway. Okay, I want third pop culture reference. This is the out of left field one, I think.
Okay.
Okay, so you touch on so many poignant and existential concepts throughout Sunseekers, but because of the way it's narrated by everybody, it just is. They're not these big things necessarily. It just is how life is. And so somehow, in some respect, you've written a book that is about everything while being about nothing.
So I wrote Seinfeld?
Bingo. I was hoping you were going to get there. Uh,
I am an
perhaps not
entertainment journalist for a living. The show about nothing, I'm familiar.
perhaps not as hyperbolically as Seinfeld. Um,
Yes.
but still there's like parallels there. Um, so you touch on some things like things I took away was like the meaning of life, what happens when we die, different perspectives, love, making every day count, aging, what's important, the idea of family, power of connection. All these things are just brought up. Um, but for now, I was wondering if any of those or other things, any type of existential message stands out the most to you when you think of Sunseekers, or which you hope people take away with them.
So we've talked a little bit about, like, my grandfather, and, one thing that I hated the idea of was that someone could have this big, beautiful life and make such an impact on all these people, and that their final chapter, final crescendo was this existence of being in a nursing home. It's sad, it's depressing. It's like he's not the same, like all these things. And I wanted to rewrite his ending. I wanted to give him because he was still alive. Like, and I think that I like there were just so like I feel like so often when people are younger, they don't show as much interest in people who have the richest stories. And I never understood that because I was just like, these are people who have lived through such insane things that we can't even comprehend. But we're always like, oh, that's like Grandpa Joe, like keep him away. And that I kind of expressed that frustration. There's one scene early on where Gracie's in the nursing home and the woman at the front desk is like, it's so nice of you to come visit him. And she gets really pissed off. And it's like one of the few times you see her get mad. And she's like, why wouldn't I want to come
Yeah.
spend time with this person who's like my favorite person in the world? Like, and I think in terms of like takeaways, it's not over till it's over. And even after it's over, like there's something to live on and they live on in you. I, I personally, like, that's how I handle grief. So that to me is one of the most important things because what are we here for? What are we working towards if it's just like and then we get old and go into a home and we sit there every single day and then we die. Like that's so depressing. Fuck that.
Uh,
Like sorry.
yeah.
Excuse me, but also like no. And I wanted to show that like there was still plenty of life left to live. There were still plenty of things for everyone to
Oh,
learn.
heck yeah.
And so that to me is the most important thing. The reason I wrote it, the reason I tried to publish it, I spent 7 years trying to publish it. Woo! Yeah. Told you I have a 6-year-old. She wasn't born when I wrote it. Um, so yeah, so I wouldn't have done that if it didn't mean so much to me. Um, yeah.
I really feel that way. I'm getting ahead of myself because we're going to eventually talk here about you as a journalist a little bit, but I went to school for journalism originally, right? And my grandmother passed away, and I couldn't understand why. The whole like, why do bad things happen to good people? What's the meaning of life? All those things, and I ended up switching my major to philosophy and classical languages instead. And I really focused for
You've
two.
got a philosophy major vibe.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Um, but I ended up spending a couple of years solely on the question of what are we here for? And, what Aristotle thinks versus Descartes versus Nietzsche versus, So I think that's one of the reasons I really like this because I think one of the things, it might be Big John that says it, he says that all we are after we pass away are our memories that people have. And that was just like, oh, dude. Yeah. Um,
One of the things I always say to my kids when I'm talking about how you interact with other people, um, they're probably not gonna remember anything you say, but they're gonna remember how that you made them feel. So if you go out into the world and you're a jerk and you're making someone feel bad about themselves, that is what they will remember about you. And then that will determine if they wanna spend time with you, how they talk about you to others, all of those things. So you're more than welcome to go be that jerk, but know that there are consequences to that. And it's something I often catch myself in like in group chats and stuff. And I'm just like, what's the point of being so like nasty about people? Like, sure, I love a good gossip as much as the next person. I didn't become a journalist for nothing. But like at the end of the day, it's like, why would we all sit around and just like be so negative and so critical of people, especially when like we're all works in progress. Like I'm not in any way, shape, or form perfect, but like I would so much rather be a positive influence and spread joy and things that like make people feel good than just being like, oh, well, did you see like this person like made a TikTok. How embarrassing. Like why would you do that? Like, who cares? Let them like have their weird TikTok. I have a
Thing.
weird algorithm. I see some weird stuff. And like, no, if you want to dance and put mud in your like living room and dance around to Britney Spears, you do that. Enjoy it. You're not hurting anybody. Go for it. But like, yeah, I don't know. I think just like the negative culture that we sometimes can have where even in like reviews and stuff, ever like it's so funny, but like ever since I started writing or I wrote my novel, I never do anything other than 5-star reviews. It's either
Ugh.
5-star reviews or I don't give it any stars because I'm just like, who cares what I like? I'll have friends be like, but who cares that like I'm like, well, I thought this character was a little underdeveloped. And so, and it's just like, but I don't know. I don't know what that author was thinking or like the Stranger Things just came out and I'm a big Stranger Things fan. And I, I had so many friends being like, this was terrible. And I was just like, I'm not a freaking Duffer brother. Like, I couldn't do that. Like, how dare you? Like, maybe not everything happened the way I wanted it to, but like, in the grand scheme of things, what's the point of me getting on the internet and railing against the man? Like, and for what? Like, just so that someone hears my voice. I want to use my voice for something much more positive. And so that was kind of, in general, the lessons that kind of came out of it for me.
I agree with you with the star rating system because I reserve 5 stars for books that impact me at like a soul level that like change like it's an intangible thing. It has nothing to do with how well the book was written,
Yeah, no,
right?
I get it.
And I've actually had authors reach out to me on Instagram or whatever, like kind of upset that I gave something like a 4.5. And I'm like, well, if you're in my mind, a 4.5 is like as close to a perfectly written book as you can get. It just didn't change who I am.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I
Um,
and I think that I totally get that. Like I have friends who will like give a very well-written book a 2 and like all this kind of stuff. And I very much am like, I I'm not sitting there writing out detailed reviews the way some people do, and, like, I value those reviews. I use those reviews when I'm, like, going to see which book I'm gonna buy, and, like but at the same time, like, I don't think that I'm adding anything to a conversation, and why am I if I am writing a review or something, what's the point? Is the point so that, like, someone sees my cool, snarky, like, voice? I did that for years. I had a entertainment blog called Honest Unmerciful, which was named after the quote from Almost Famous where Philip Seymour Hoffman says, "You've got to be honest and unmerciful."
not
And I thought it
merciful.
was so
Yep.
cool. And I wrote all these reviews and like said all this like nasty stuff. And like looking back, it's just like, to what end? Did anyone read that and go like, yes, I now feel that Rachel is of a higher level intellectually, and I think that we should hire her for many roles. Like, no. So that I mean, I totally get the star system. I totally
Uh-huh.
get, like, why people, like, have different rankings, and I often get people will text me and be like, "Hey, I saw you gave this 5 stars. What did you really think?" Because they know that I just give everything 5 stars or no stars. Um, and I of course will engage with that and, like, tell someone like, "Oh, like, this is the things I liked or didn't like or whatever." But in terms of, like, the world, I don't think the world needs to know my thoughts on something personally.
Okay. I'll ask one more question about Sunseekers specifically.
Okay.
We're gonna stay in the going out into the world and being a jerk and having a weird ass Instagram following.
Sure.
The PTA moms.
Yeah.
These chicks were so real. And they took me back to 2004. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What a
I've
time.
known so many Karens, both in high school and right now.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think of their purpose. So let me throw this at you. I think that they help remind readers what's important. And I think they further the existential, poignant conversations that are being had in the book. Um, through the comparison of Leanne and Dan's struggles, Gracie and John, almost a rhetorical non-worth, if you will. Um, but because they feel so real to me, I can only go ahead and project onto you that they feel real to you. Uh, so I'm curious about your thoughts on Corinne, and we don't have to like name names about where they came from. That's rude. So I'll let you organically go on the PTA moms.
I love that you said 2004 because that was when I was in high school. Well, yeah, I was in high school in 2004. And it's a very different time than it is now. So, like, the generation that's coming up as teenagers now are very, like, inclusive, and they,
It's
like,
weird.
yeah, and they, like, are openly talking about, like, gender identity and things that I think are phenomenal steps forward, but that did not exist when I was a teenager. Um, People were nasty to each other, women especially, um, and it was very interesting. I also, like, in high school, there was, a very tragic at my high school death. Multiple kids went out for a joyride in a car and were killed. And this happened during the school year. Everyone came to school the next day, and it was like, "Oh my gosh." And I found myself noticing there were people who I felt, and maybe this is wrong of me, but I felt were performatively grieving for
Mm.
something that they were not connected to. And that kind of inspired those characters in a sense. First off, they came from a place where I had to have a common enemy for Leanne and Dan to bond over. So that's just, like, logistically as a writer, I knew that I needed something there. Um, and then in terms of, like, they're out searching for a missing child, taking selfies at, like, potential scenes of where she could be dead. Like, I wanted to kind of show the, like, nastier side to people who want attention during these times of tragedy. Like, there are plenty of people who are going through actual devastation who I've had to interview as a journalist while they are going through devastation, and it is a terrible thing to both have to be the one that's like, "Hey, do you have a quote after your best friend was murdered in cold blood?" But also, like, then the people who are like, "Oh, yes, this was my deepest, dearest friend." And you can just kind of smell the bullshit on them, like, from the start. And so this was kind of my response to that, where kind of like groupies of tragedy almost, where they like they want the fame that no one who's actually been through a tragedy would ever want. Um And so that was kind of the inspiration behind it. It really wasn't a specific person, or it was just more of the concept of, like, you have done nothing but be terrible to this woman and her family, and now that she's going through something that's, like, interesting, quote unquote, you want
You
to
want to be a
be
part of it.
involved in that. You
Yeah.
wanna kind of glom on to that. And so that was kind of where it came from. I also there was before I started dating my husband, we met in high school. And there's a girl who was very clearly trying to entice him, let's say. And she would do so by being kind of suggestive at times. And so some of Corinne's moves came from her. I will say that, because I found them to be comical. Um,
I'm really glad that you wrote Dan as being upset and uncomfortable by those things, because it's my experience that because girls get jealous when that kind of situation happens, they must think that we like it No, 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 no. Dan was spot on, 100% realistic with the, oh, don't touch me, you lady.
Yeah. And I also wanted to kind of show that, like, he wasn't just like a gross pervy dude, because you would guess that he was based off of his past actions. But in reality, like, there was a lot more complex than that. And so I kind of used Corinne to show that he wasn't just like a, "Hey, what's up?" kind of
Love the
broy
the
broy
putting
kinda.
the layers back onto the onion. I love it. Um, and I like that Corinne and the PTA moms are also informed by your time as a journalist with interviewing people. I knew that you were a journalist. I d- Let me throw some numbers at you. Um, if you go to the Entertainment Tonight's website
Gosh,
and you search for you,
for me.
you'll get over 9,600 results back. And then I didn't want to go to every single website. It's just like time.
Why not?
So I went to Muckrack,
Gosh.
which sources articles from all publications. If people listening don't know, and I was returned specifically for your name over 16,000 results. That is crazy.
How?
But let's not even talk about how, because that's like the culmination of the story of the journalism career so far, right? When did you want to write fiction, or did you want to write articles like newspaper, magazine stuff? When did you know you wanted to write? And what kind of stories did you want to tell? Where did that start and come from?
Yes, I wanted to do both those things.
Okay.
I really fancied myself in college as a future film reviewer. I was a film studies minor. I loved Entertainment Weekly, not Entertainment Tonight, as, a lot of my family members will say, "Well, when Rachel worked at Entertainment Weekly," I never worked at Entertainment Weekly, but in the heyday of Entertainment Weekly, when the magazine would come out regularly, I idolized their film reviewers. I thought they were, like, the coolest. Um, they were all men, and I was like, "Nah, it's gonna be me." Um, and so I was very, like I said, I had created that blog. Wrote on it as if I had an audience, and eventually did kind of get an audience, like, by doing that, and really kind of, without realizing it, was practicing for my future career, because I had been in print journalism in college. So I worked for the newspaper. I did every job you could do basically at the newspaper. I started my own magazine, the first, like, student run magazine on my campus, and was, like,
That's
constantly
cool.
trying to, like, do these things to get into print. In my professional career, last year was the first year I got something in print. Everything I've done has been digital, and it's all been, online articles, and that's kind of where journalism is currently, if even that, like, that's even
Yep.
struggling to cling on. Um, and so I very much was like, "Okay, I wanna do something where I can watch movies for a living." That was my goal. My 2 history teacher parents didn't love that goal. They were like, "Are you sure? Don't you wanna, like, get a real degree?" And then I told them that actually you learn more about history and, the world around you by being a journalist, by asking questions and figuring these things out.
Yes.
Of course, I was asking questions about the Kardashians. They were asking questions about, like, ancient history, just like
Potato,
potato,
potato.
potato.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, but and it's so like, they my mom was like, "Oh, like, I told someone you worked at Entertainment Tonight, and they were really excited." I was like, "Yes, it is a well-known thing." I have to, like, let them know, like, "Yes, like." It is what it is. They often are like, "Are you our child?" Because our interests diverge. Um, but I always wanted to kind of do that. When I was a kid, I wanted to be the next Broadway star. I was convinced. I did chorus and theater and all this kind of stuff. Then when I kind of hit a certain level where I was like, I do not have the skill set for these things, I decided I wanted to write about them instead.
There you go.
So, did not become the next American Idol, but I have interviewed them. Um, kind of where that all came from. But in the past year, my mom came across a box of my first grade novels where I was writing books that I would like staple together from age 7. And there was like one that had an author bio where it said, Rachel Dozier, maiden name, has wanted to be an author all her life. And I was like, I was 7. So it's kind of always gone hand in hand. I think I mentioned my dad wrote a lot growing up, so that was always kind of like an example I had of like someone sitting down and regularly working on like books and stories and things like that. And so that was kind of where my lack of imagination came in. I was like, oh, I could do that. I
Okay.
could stories. I would write like fan fiction and of like my favorite series. And um I went back and read it. It was not bad.
Nice.
I was like, "All right, Rachel." Um, but yeah, no, so it kind of always went hand in hand. And so it once I kind of graduated and started working in journalism and didn't have children, so I had all this free time. Uh, I would kind of dabble in fiction on the side, and then Sunseekers was the first time that I really like got serious and really like started researching how to find agents and how to publish and all that kind of stuff, and then learned that it's actually a total nightmare and I should never do it. And then I kept doing it.
Uh, you mentioned Almost Famous. That was my why for going into journalism school. That
Yes.
was what I wanted to do. Um,
That was a goodie.
yeah. But I went to the script school of journalism.
Okay.
So I was admitted into like, I think at the time it was like number 3 in the nation or whatever. And they really beat into you that you're not a journalist unless you work for a newspaper. They like
Mm.
beat all of any hope and dream you might have. So after the first, I think it was a year, four, four semesters I did. No, they were on the quarter system. It must have been 6 quarters. I was finally like, screw this. And I dropped out of school and I toured in a rock band instead. I was like, well, if I'm not going to write it, I'm going to do it. Um, yeah.
Love that.
And then, anyways, then I went back so I love that our stories are actually kind of oddly similar and parallel.
Mhm.
But yours is like the stuff that journalism students' dreams are made out of on paper. Don't sell yourself short.
It's so funny
Um,
you say that because, like, in my school, I went to James Madison University. I love that school. It's a smaller, university in Virginia, but it, actually has a lot of, students that come from, up north, and, the journalism program, I loved working on the newspaper, and I was very, like, involved in the newspaper, but the classes and stuff, it just felt, like, very, like, local. So they would be like, "Well, the greatest job you could have would be to work for the local newspaper, or the greatest job you could have would be to be like a local broadcaster." I was like, "I don't wanna do that. Like, I wanna work for a national publication. I wanna live in New York City. I wanna, like, do the glamorous things," which are actually not at all glamorous, so fun. And so, like, I felt very much like I have my best friend from college was my maid of honor. She worked for a really long time for ESPN, and we, like, met working together on the paper. We were in the same major, and we would always joke that every year they never invited us to be the speakers at their, like, annual like, alum day. And we would always be like, "Another year and no call." And, like, but they would have, like, the Roanoke Times editor come in, and And that's not to belittle that at all. It was just that was what was, like, prioritized there, and I found myself like, I like magazines. I will go to New York City. Like, it was just this very, like, I didn't have a background the way I should have. Like, I didn't know, like, the prestigious things or the right thing to do. I just very much, like, I'm gonna work as hard as I can, and I will see where I end up. And I ended up in great places. And
It sounds like it. I know about New York. I know
yeah,
about London.
yeah.
Where
I
else have you gone?
I used to be a cool person until I had kids. No, so yeah, I mean, I moved to New York and I started working at an entertainment startup that no longer exists, called Wet Paint Entertainment. But one thing I learned there was, like, if you just are a total workhorse and just, like, churning out stories and constantly working, it will attract the attention of other publications. And I went from there to working at Us Weekly, which, talk about almost famous, was in the same company and building as Rolling Stone. And
Cool.
so I, like, every day would, like, walk past, like, the Rolling Stone offices and was just like, "Okay, I've done something with my life." Um, and then after about 4 years in New York, I felt like I was getting complacent. I was a little bit bored. New York is really great when you're in your 20s, and then, like, as you start getting older, it's like, is this gonna be my forever, or, like, is this, like, a temporary thing? So a lot of people who go to New York are temporary, and then I know a lot of people who are still hanging out in the city, and that's awesome. Couldn't be me, but it's awesome. And, so I started kind of my husband was working for, L'Oreal, the cosmetics company, and we often say he was a makeup tester. He was not. Um, he was working in their, like, supply chain stuff, and they had offices in London, and I at Us Weekly, we had a, like, London several people who lived in London who worked for us, and I was like, "Oh, well, like, maybe I could do that." And so I started kind of asking around, and while I was asking around, he applied for jobs in London, and he got the job, and then they said, "No, we're not gonna let you do that because we can't set a precedent that you could work remotely and do your job." And I was like, "Oh, sick. Okay, well, my husband has a job, and he's moving to London, so, like, I think this is me quitting. I don't know what else to do right now because I thought this was, like, kind of a, like, yeah, for sure it'll happen." And actually, the reporter who told me, like, "Oh, yeah, it'll totally," he went on to become, like, a really well-known Royals reporter, so anytime I see him, I'm like, "Thanks a lot for," but, like, he, was very kind, but I was under a false impression. And so then I just started kind of panicking, and I was like, "I can't not have a job, like, we're moving internationally." And I saw a listing at Entertainment Tonight for a morning editor, and I was like, "You know what's really in the morning time? What would you ever consider?" And they actually made the job for me, and it happened to be at a time when, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were, getting to
Mhm.
know one another in London, and so I got to do some really cool stuff and I went to the royal wedding in Windsor, not into the church, but I got to, like, field produce our coverage of it and, um, do these things just because of where I was, and it was very cool. And then, like I said, don't have kids, they ruin everything. I, had my daughter and took full advantage of the lovely, maternity leave that the UK offers that they should offer here, and then was like, "I cannot raise this child and not be around some sort of family. I will lose my mind, and
Sure.
I'll take her down with me." And so we moved back to Virginia, and luckily by that point in 2019, they were like, "Well, you have shown that you can work remotely. We will allow it." And then 2020 happened, and they were like, "Just kidding, everyone's remote now." So that's kind of where I've been ever since, is here. And Uh, in 2023, 2004. So the year the book came out, I was like, this is my year. It's going to be awesome. And Entertainment Tonight decided to shut down their entire website. So the only thing they do on their website now are videos. Myself and all of my coworkers of 8 years lost all of our jobs. And I was like, oh, I've never experienced this before, which is actually kind of weird in my field. Like normally, like layoffs are pretty common in journalism.
Mhm.
And so I was very much like untethered and like I don't do well with that. Like I need to like I said when I had a kid, like I need to know what's going on. Um I am not like a and then I became like an entrepreneur. Like no, I can't do that. That's not my lifestyle. It's not my mindset. I'm not cut out for that. Like I'm like when is the paycheck coming and how will it get to my mail? So yeah, so I then continued on and did a lot of like full-time freelancing stuff for e-news and then eventually People and this past fall finally got hired full-time again. So,
Woohoo!
just trying, just trying to make it. So it always feels like I'm just trying to make it, but on paper it looks very fancy. It's much less fancy in person when you're in your pajamas covering the Grammys. Like that's
Well,
not fancy.
sure, but as an 18-year-old just admitted to journalism school, taking your first grammar class to see a resume that is international with some of the biggest known pop media publications, that's like the stars in your eyes as a 18-year-old college student. You know what I mean? That's the
For
dream.
sure. For sure. I mean, anytime, like I said, I was at this college where everyone was like so obsessed with local news people. Anytime anyone worked for something outside of Virginia, I was like, tell me your life story. Like, I need to know every piece of information and how I could possibly find a way into that. But uh,
Here I am. You're outside of Ohio, and I'm like, tell me everything about suburbia, Richmond. So,
um,
um,
it's not all it's cracked up to be. I grew up here.
and along with the starry-eyed journalism career, you published your book. You've got more in the works, but I would like to start bringing us to a close by learning more about you by throwing Sunseekers stuff at you.
Gosh. I hope
Okay.
it's not a book. That hurt.
Um, well, you wrote a philosophical story, whether you want to uh, admit it or not. So we're going to go down a couple of rabbit holes, but we'll start light and simple.
Okay.
Um, in her monologue, this is something that really, these are all things that really stuck with me, and I had to write them down immediately. Gracie mentions that it's very important to know what your favorite things are, because wouldn't it be embarrassing if someone asked you and you didn't know the answer, which is the most millennial thing I've ever heard, ever.
Thank
That
you so
is, that's the root cause of anxiety when we're 5 and 6 years old. So, um, but it makes me want to know some of your favorite things,
much.
right?
Go
So I'm going
for
to
it.
put you on the spot since you put yourself on the spot. What's your favorite color?
Green. Sage, like a sage green.
Sage. Nice. What's your favorite movie?
Titanic.
Yes. All
You wanna
right.
talk about being a millennial? I was 7 years old, and my parents took me to the theater to see it, and it changed my world. I was like, "Oh, like, that made me fall in love with cinema." I was like, "This is peak cinema." Up until this point, I was
Well, it
watching
it was at
Disney
the time.
movies. I did not know what the world could be, and Leonardo DiCaprio showed me what the world could be.
That was so loaded.
I stand by it. My daughter's about to turn 7, and I was like, "Is it time to show her Titanic?" And my husband was like, "Absolutely not. What's wrong with you?" Like,
I think it was 2017. I took my wife to one of the local movie theaters for Valentine's Day, and they were screening
yeah,
Titanic.
they did a ton of re-releases. I've been to them all.
And we ordered pizza and a bunch of wine, and we were just sitting there. There was a group of like 6 girls in the row in front of us to the right. No dates. They were just there with each other, and it was clear that they had had about 6 bottles of wine between them before the movie started. and they just catcalled and commentated the entire movie. And it was the best part of the movie. We loved
Okay,
it. They were
okay.
hilarious. And then when Rose is telling Jack to hold on in the ocean, you know,
I am familiar, yes.
yeah, there
I
was
just
some old
appreciate
dude
the camera.
behind us that finally told the girls to shut up. And the girls turned around and said, "You're just now saying that?" And they just, anyways, love Titanic. I'm right there with you. Okay.
I
What's your
For
favorite
the
TV
20th
show?
anniversary of Titanic, I got to interview James Cameron,
Of course you did.
and I was like, "Bud, look, you're, like, notoriously, like, not kind, and I don't care because you created the truly greatest piece of cinema in this world." And
Did
I
you
had to stop myself so many times, like, I was like, "Do not fangirl, Rachel. Be a professional." And I was just like, "I can't. It's Titanic."
did you fangirl even a little bit, or did you remain professional?
I'm bad at that. I also recently interviewed Clay Aiken, which is a hilarious statement to make. When I was in middle school, Clay Aiken was, like, my number 1, like, crush, and looking back on it now is a tough hang, and I was like, "I just have to, like, let you know, like, before we start this interview, like, this is where I'm coming from. My first concert was American Idol season 2 finalists, and like, you were the man. After you lost American Idol, I came to school wearing all black in mourning for your loss." Like,
That he actually appreciated that.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're buds now, me and Clay.
Is he saved in your phone oh, that one TV guy so that your husband doesn't know?
No, as you read in my bio earlier, the only person my husband has to worry about is Jack Black.
Yeah, okay. Hey, man, if I could get some of that beard, I would. But
I
I
wrote
just have a
an
mustache.
article for People back in April that was like, "As a People staffer, I am, like, campaigning to have Jack Black be named Sexiest Man Alive, and here's why."
I would love that.
Yeah,
It if it's gonna be a picture on the cover of the magazine, he's gotta have that toy saxophone. That's
yeah.
yeah,
And, like, a
yeah.
wolf shirt, like,
Yes,
it's the vibe.
yes. Um, what's your favorite TV show?
Um, it's a kind of a tie. It depends on what the mood is. If the mood is, like, storytelling, it's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. If
Nice.
it's, like, a comfort show, it's either Gilmore Girls or New Girl. New Girl, for some reason, is the show that I have laughed the hardest at in my life. And so, like, if I, like, just need to, like, have, like, like, the millennial thing where it's like, I just need to, like, tune out from the world, it's like, we're turning on New Girl so that I can feel happiness again. Yeah.
So when I kept bringing up Buffy at Crozet, I didn't realize that was gonna hit with anybody. It's just okay.
It's I am, like, the main Buffy audience. I just went to, like, you saw the, vintage thing. I spent the entire time looking for Buffy merchandise, nothing. It's just like, "Why am I here? Where is my"
I saw that and I told my wife, I'm like, we might have to drive down to Richmond next like
Oh, they
this
it goes
this
all
winter.
over. Apparently,
Okay,
it's
it's a traveling thing.
full, like, tour, yeah. But yes, please come to Richmond.
Um, what's other than yours, what's your favorite book?
My book is not my favorite book. Um, I'm not I'm not like, Justin Bieber playing his music when he's making love, like, no. Um, it's not the vibe. Um, I really love Frederick Bachman. He's my favorite author. Um, his Beartown series, I think, is some of the greatest modern fiction. Um, and I also really love Stephen Rowley. He writes, books like The Guncle and, The Celebrants, and lots of, like, really smart comedy. Like, it's comedy that always has, like, a deeper message, and I really like that. Um, and I hate that my 2 favorite modern authors are men, but it's what it is.
It's actually surprising because I something I learned in 2025 or after like 30 7 years of reading white dudes, 2025 showed me that I actually much prefer female authors and female main characters.
I'm like in a numbers game, yes, but in terms of like my favorites,
Yeah,
if
sure.
you've never
I
read a
get it.
Frederick Bachman book, I highly recommend you go check it out because it like
Had
you
it.
want to talk about philosophy. That man can write. It's like poetry. The way he can go from like the funniest thing you have read to the most like stab in your gut, like beautiful thing. Like and just like statements about like the world and like oh, just he
Oh,
just came out
it's gonna be
last
written
year.
down.
Yeah, he just came out last year with what he says is his last book, and, like, if it is, I'm gonna be real bummed.
Huh.
But it's called My Friends, and that was my top book of the year. And just, like, everything I've read of his is just he writes both comedy and the Beartown series is drama, and it's just so beautiful. It it makes you wanna give up being a writer because 'cause you're reading it and you're like, "I will never achieve what this man has achieved," but it's also, beautiful.
Are you a music person?
Yeah.
Okay, do you have a
Well,
favorite band or record? Sorry, record, CD, album, I don't know, whatever word you wanna insert there.
so it depends on when you're asking this question. I've recently my husband and I went to Colorado and went to Red Rocks for the first time. And when we went to Red Rocks, because I grew up in very embarrassing fashion listening to Dave Matthews. Um,
That's my favorite band,
oh
period,
well, you're
period.
welcome.
Yeah.
Is that why you're in Charlottesville all the time? You're just hoping to catch a sighting of Dave?
Uh,
He like lives
yes,
there.
the very first time I ever went to Charlottesville is because I wanted to go to Blenheim and I wanted to go to Miller's. Um, and that was actually then how I found the entire Monticello AVA and the little towns tucked in and around. And then we fell in love with the Shenandoah National Park and the Blue Ridge Mountains and the various
It's pretty
wineries and
insane.
stuff.
It's
Yeah,
like a really beautiful place. Like,
and the food.
I grew up in Richmond, but, like, I also am like, I wanna go to Charlottesville as often as possible. Like,
Yeah.
Charlottesville and Jose, like, love it.
Yes.
Um, and where I went to school was another hour west, in the mountains as well,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I'm very familiar. But, yeah, so we went to Red Rocks, and I was like, "I really wanna, like, tour it because I, like, grew up listening to, like, his, like, live concert albums at Red
Live
Rocks
at
and
Red
stuff.
Rocks.
I
Yeah.
was like, "It seems, like, so cool," and I was like, "Oh, but there's a show there tonight," and my husband was like, "Well, let's just, like, go to that show," and it was Brandi Carlile,
Oh,
and she was amazing and now has become my whole personality.
okay.
Like, I just really have been going back, like, through her, like, catalog and love like, talk about poetry, like, her music is just
She's good.
beautiful.
Yes.
And I also really like John Mayer. I think he's the greatest guitarist of our generation.
I don't think he is. I know he is.
Yeah,
Uh huh.
he's got a certain set of skills, like
Yeah.
Liam Neeson. Growing up, I listened to I was, like, so weird, like, I was all about, like, the millennial pop, but I also was a huge Broadway kid, so tons of Broadway albums, and then I also was, like, a huge Green Day, Fountains of Wayne,
Yes.
um, emo kid. My emo friend recently got married, and her whole reception playlist, I was just like, "Every one of these is a banger." Like, I'm having a good time. And, like, my parents were like, "I do not know this music." And I was like, "You wouldn't. Get out. Like, what do you want? You gonna play Celebrate Good Times? Get out."
I
But yeah.
definitely have a pop punk playlist of my own with like Bowling for Soup and
Oh,
Blink
I
and
just
Green
saw
Day
I
and
just saw Simple Plan, Bowling for Soup, um, 303, is that the group?
yes.
They all came to Richmond, and I was like, "It's
Well, that
time.
must have been good.
I now am an adult and have money, so, like,
There you go.
we're gonna go see
Get
Simple."
some. Get some. Okay. More Gracie.
Okay.
And we're going to progressively get a little heavier. She has more inner monologue, which this is also probably the most quintessential millennial thing I've ever heard. It seems like I'm always getting older, but it's never old enough. As we, I'll go ahead and assume that we're about the same age. As we are looking at 40, I personally still have days
Okay,
where I don't feel old enough.
calm down. I'm 35. I'm
Okay.
mid-30s, like, please.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm 38.
Do
Okay.
not age me.
I'm 38. My bad. So I will ask, are you old enough yet?
You're I I've heard so many, like I feel like because I watch a lot of celebrity interviews for my job, I feel like 60 is the age. Like, a lot of people, like, women turning 60 are like, "This is the time. You do not care a lick. Like, just go." Like, you're living your life for yourself, your kids are grown, you're out there, and, like, it's just like, "Alright, I'm looking forward to 60."
Okay.
Um, no, I'm not old enough. I come to this realization, especially when I'm parenting, and I'm just like, "Are you taking me seriously? I'm not taking me seriously." Like, that I wouldn't if I were you, but, like, you seem to be kinda listening, except the younger one doesn't, so and I respect it. I'm like, I get it." I don't have the, like, authority. Like, I feel like my mom could always make like, I think Leanne kinda struggles with this a little too in the book where she's like, "My mom could always make, like, the perfect meal," and, like,
Hmm.
I have such memories of, like, my mom could, like, cut a peanut butter and jelly so well, but when I do it, it's so messy. And, like, just like that, like, image of
It's so
perfection,
true,
which
though.
I'm sure wasn't real, but, like, in my kid brain was like, "Oh, yeah." And now I'm doing it as an adult, and I'm like, "Hmm, this 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 doesn't ring true." I don't I don't know that I believe this.
Okay. Well, okay. On the flip side, grandfather kind of tells Gracie that like first you're a baby and then you age into a being an adult and then adults age back into being a babies. Given that progression and the flip side of the coin, when is when are you old enough before you're too old? Is it that 60 mark?
Oh gosh. I don't know. I mean, I think that I don't feel that way as much. That character is not representative of my feelings. I do think that there are certainly physical limitations that can be frustrating, and I say this as someone who's 35, so, like, I don't even know. Um, all of like, I haven't gone through menopause, and I haven't, like, experienced, like, a huge physical setback. But when I wake up in the morning, my shoulder hurts a lot, and that's new. Like, I can't necessarily, like, spring up out of a chair, like, I feel like I, like, do Peloton workouts so that I can, like, lift my children without, like, my back going out, and last week when I was, like, doing a push-up, my shoulder spasmed and I collapsed, like, onto the ground, so, like, that kinda stuff sucks, but I do think that there is, like, a confidence that comes with getting older. Same as when you're in high school or school and you reach the top grade of whatever school you're in, and you're like, "Oh, none of this is that serious." Like, I'm a senior now, and, like, all these things that I was, like, so scared about and, like, so, like, I hope I don't look stupid doing that. It's like, who cares? Because like, you've reached that, like, level where it's just like, if I want to do something insane, who cares if people think that that's stupid? Because I'm having a good time. So, like, I like that level of adulthood.
All right.
Like, you're getting to a point where it's, like, not so self-conscious and more like, "This is what I wanna do. This brings me joy and happiness, and it's not hurting anybody, so I'm gonna do it." And I like that. I don't know if that
Okay.
answers your question. Again, I
There,
don't know if
I
anything
don't.
I say answers any questions.
I don't think there is an answer. One more question about aging, I suppose. And because you brought up Dave Matthews, it made me think of this. In their most recent album, there's a song where he says, "Time, do we know when it's too late? Always trying to get it back, trying to get it back." Uh, and it makes me think of Big John a little bit. He's always trying to get that time back. So after writing this book and having thought about time and life from so many different perspectives, do you have any insights into how into time and how we should be spending it.
What a
Maybe you should just channel your husband. He seems to have a pretty decent outlook on it.
yeah. Don't tell him that his ego will just um, yeah, I mean, I kind of, like, vacillate between, like, I will be really nostalgic and, like, try to harken back to, like, childhood happiness and things like that a lot. Like, the book that I'm just finished a draft of is set in the '90s, and it's all about a mall walking group because I miss the mall. It's literally that's I wrote it because I watched season 3 of Stranger Things, and I kept thinking about it, and I was like, "Why am I so obsessed with this season?" And I'm like, "It's because I like the mall. I like the mall a lot, and the mall's, like, gone now, and that makes me sad." And so I have that side of my brain that's like, "Oh, like, bring back the good days and nostalgia and all that." And then I have the side of my brain that's like, "There will one day be a point where I will miss this. So, like, what's happening right now." And I apply it a lot to, like, being a parent where, like, not the videos where, like, "You're gonna miss this." Um, 'cause I will not miss the tantrums and the exhaustion and all that, but, like, there will be a time where my kid's not gonna be like, "Mom, can you tell me a story? Mom, can you do that?" Like, they won't wanna talk to me. Um, and so anytime I find myself getting kinda like, "Oh my god, like, geez," I try to take a moment where I'm like, know that in 5 years, I will really wish that this is the situation and embrace that. And there will be plenty of great things that come in 5 years, but right now, this is what I have. And I will one day not pick up my 3-year-old and carry her all around. And so, like, every little thing, try to, like, embrace that and, like, for what it is, for that what that stage is. Um, and so that's kind of how I view it, where it's like, I miss the good old days, but I'm not, like, making childhood great again, you know?
Oh, speaking of making things great again,
No.
let's talk about how crap 2025 has been for a second. I think at some point, in order to combat some of the crap that we're living in, general you
The
need
world.
to flip some type of switch in your head where, like, the meaning of life is not necessarily found in others, and the meaning of life is not found in your bank account or what other people think of you, or maybe even what you think of other people. And I think your book touches on that a great deal. Um, Very poignantly, Gracie asks her grandfather, and I loved this. This was probably the my favorite thing that I read. Why do we have to be something? Why can't we just want to be like something? Um, so I want to ask you two questions about that. In terms of being a journalist, is there what do you want to be like? Is there anyone you want to be like? Is there a style you want to be like?
It goes back to kind of the thing I was saying about what I tell my kids,
Hmm.
where you're not gonna remember what someone says, but you're gonna remember how they made you feel. And I think anytime you're talking about, like, books that, like, really touch your soul and things like that. Anytime I walk away from something, whether it be a story I've read or a movie I've seen or a person I've interacted with, and I feel like they have changed me for the better or shifted me fundamentally, like, I hope to be that to someone, I guess. But I I think for so long it was like, "Oh, like, I wanna be a famous Broadway star. I wanna be a famous movie critic. I want like" and now I'm very much in a headspace of, like, I want to bring people joy in a world that's not very joyful a lot of the
Yes.
time. So, whether that's me being an idiot on the internet or whether that's me writing about something that helps people escape or whether it's writing about something that makes people feel seen, like that those are all ways that I feel like I can contribute. Um, and hopefully raising good human beings who aren't, uh, the worst of society, um, and who can make a better future than I had. That's the most I can hope for.
Okay.
But, you know?
And I'm assuming that that answer is also inclusive of what you want to be like as a novelist.
Yeah, I mean, I when the book came out, I made, like, bookmarks and stuff to go with it, and the whole, like, "slogan," quote, unquote, that I had on the bookmarks, was "Read books that let the light in." And, like, I love a good murder mystery as much as the next person, and I wanted to write I would never write one because I would wanna always write something that, like, brings happiness in, um and I love, like, the craft of mysteries and storytelling. I just watched the Knives Out movie, and I love that, like, I'm into all of it. I'm not at all hating on any of it. I have tons of great mystery writer friends, um, but I could never be in that headspace for that amount of time to that it took to write a book, and I would want I write from places that make me happy. So, that's Gracie's Mind. That's The Mall in the '90s. That's, exploring female friendships. Like, I all of it is from places that make me happy or things a world that I wish could have exist.
Okay. All right. Two more and then we'll wrap up. Promise.
What is the meaning of life?
Yes. Well, oh
7?
man.
Is
Oh
that
man. Do you reach through here and look at my notes?
no, no, did you say is that really the question?
No,
No,
I made the question a lot lighter than that, but
go for
okay.
it.
Grandfather imports many. He imparts many life lessons. One of them to Gracie that I touched on earlier is when he says everyone dies at some point. That's why you have to make sure you're making every day count. Just like he's making that day count by being with her, which was just all in the feels. Um, in this world of optimization and extremes, I think we can easily get lost in what it means to make every day count. So, Rachel, how do you make every day count? And maybe how would you advise others, or perhaps maybe this is easier to think of your daughters to make every day count?
So funny, you're talking about, like, optimization. I was talking yesterday, I was like, "I can't have a casual hobby because I don't have the ability to just, like." So, my example is that I, on January 1st, pulled a puzzle box out of the closet, and I'm not a known puzzler, but I sat down and I was like, "Puzzle time, let's do this." Like, I was like, like, is puzzle making my new profession? Like, I just wish that I could just be like, "Oh, like, I'll add a few pieces today," but, like, no, like, I, like, tunnel vision puzzled for, like, 3 days on this, like, Thomas Kincaid Disney puzzle, and but, like, my daughter came home from school yesterday, and my husband met her, and he was like, "Do you wanna play a game?" And so he was like, "Rachel, go on, like, do what you want." And I went upstairs and I puzzled for 2 hours. I was like, "Rachel, you could have been spending time with your child, but instead, you made a Little Mermaid puzzle. Like, get your life together." And so in terms of making it count, I feel like you need to decide what's, like, an achievement that I'm doing just to achieve, like finishing a puzzle that's hard, and what's something that puts back into the world. So, I feel like novel writing puts things back into the world. I feel like raising my daughters puts things back into the world. And in terms of, like, daily achievements, making it count daily, we try to do at dinner time a high and a low of the day. And that's a way to just kind of be like, "This good thing happened to me today, and this thing made me sad, and I want to share that with you because you love me. So, you should care about the good things and the bad things." And I try to take that, and there's some days where I'm like, "I don't know what my high was," or some days where I'm like, "I don't know what my low was." And that's okay too, but if you can come up with something each day, even if it's small, like that oftentimes my highs are like my eldest child was really kind, or my youngest one put her shoes on, like little things. But at the same time, they're important to celebrate and to have meaning. I saw something. I cover the Today Show for work a lot, and they were talking about someone put up in a school a microphone, and on it was a note that said, "Read into the camera one good thing that happened to you today." And it was just so amazing to see people's faces light up as they were, like, sharing, like, "I got a really good grade on a test today," or, like, "My mom just had a baby." Like, huge things and, like, small things, but in this, like, just talk about something positive brought so much joy. And I try to do that every day if I can.
Sounds like good advice. Um, okay. Last one, a little less philosophical and less heavy. Well, I hope. I could be wrong. But I had a grandfather figure. He wasn't my grandfather, but he might as well have been. He taught me how to fish throughout my childhood. I love fly fishing. I've been doing it since I was a little kid. And fishing seems to be it's a very big part of this story, very big part of Big John himself, memories for Leanne and Sarah, formative moment for Gracie, all the things. And I don't believe that can be something that you just randomly picked. So what I want to ask is, what does fishing mean to you? And do you perhaps have a particularly important fishing memory or story?
So my dad is a fisherman. He one of my, like, early early memories of, like, going out and, like, doing an activity would be being in a canoe. And I didn't fly fish. He fly fishes, but I didn't fly fish. I just normal rod and reel. And actually for Christmas this year, he got my eldest daughter, her first rod and reel, and plans
Mhm.
to take her out, which we've been discussing, like, do I need to be there too? But yeah, I had really early memories of, like, getting up at 5 a.m. and we'd go out to the Potomac River. We lived in Northern Virginia at the time, and would fish, like, a stretch of, the river. Yeah, so I that was, like, a big part of my childhood was fishing. And it was one of the few, like, I was an only child and I was a girl, and I don't think my dad necessarily wanted a boy, but he was into sports a lot, and I did 8 years of basketball and hated every second of it. And finally one day, like, came to him and said, "Dad, I have to tell you something. I don't wanna play basketball." He was like, "Okay." And again, I'm never gonna ask for help or say the, like, not people pleaser thing. Um, and yeah, so but fishing, like, we enjoyed doing, and my mom would also fish, and, like, we would all go out, and, like, it was, like, one of, like, you could tell he really enjoyed, like, teaching me that. And it was one of the few things that I didn't push back against in terms of learning. So I was like, "Oh, okay, like, that's cool to know that and, like, do those things." So fishing and biking were really big in my childhood. But yeah, so when again, you talk about, like, writing first books and stuff, it was very much like, I have these characters. Now what should they do? They should fish because
I
I
should go
fish.
fishing.
Yeah. But you'd learn a lot on the river. And you can have, like, a lot of, like, deeper conversations that you wouldn't necessarily have, like, at home over dinner, because 'cause you're focused on something else. So, yeah, that's where that came from.
Well, everybody, the book is Sunseekers by Rachel McRady. I urge all of you to go out and buy it or borrow it from the library. I know that when I finished my copy, I immediately bought a copy for my mother-in-law and gifted it to
Oh,
her.
nice.
Um, and I urge all of you to do the same. But you've mentioned multiple books that are in the works, and I've followed along on Instagram and I've seen your word count increase week over week over week throughout 2025. So, what is next for Rachel? What are you working on? What are you trying to get out there into the world? What should we all be watching for?
So I signed a deal in December for my second book. It's called Let's Do This Again Soon. And it is about adult female friendships and how they change over time. And basically, it follows a TV presenter who blows up her life on live TV in 45 seconds and realizes that both her professional and personal life are in shambles. She doesn't have any friends anymore, and she decides to go back to the members of her bridal party to figure out what went wrong. So I've been calling it High Fidelity for Female Friendships, if you're familiar with High
Love
Fidelity,
that.
where he
Love
goes
that. Yeah.
back to his past relationships and tries to figure out what went wrong with them. Um, and that comes out in May of 2027. So we've got some time.
Okay.
The publishing process is a lengthy one, which is why I often, when I'm writing, feel such an urgency. Alexander Hamilton, why do you write like you're running out of time kind of vibe? Because I'm like, if I don't finish this draft, then that just sets it back that much further, kind of thing. But I just finished a draft of a book, which the tentative title right now is Gladys Good Mall Walker. Um,
Okay.
and it is set in the 90s in a mall, and it is much more comedy style. Um,
I'm sorry. I just my stupid tism brain, if you will, just connected that to Paul Blart Mall Cop.
y yeah, yeah, it's not meant to connect. Um,
Okay.
I actually watched Paul Blart Mall Cop for the first time while writing this book, and I was like, "This is such a terrible movie that did not age well." Uh,
Yeah.
it's not great. Um
Most of what Kevin didn't age well.
Yeah, I would not list Paul Blart Mall Cop as a title or as a comparable title.
Uh-uh.
But I feel like in the last couple of years, I've read a lot of books that the central character is a senior citizen, shall we say, who still has quite a bit of life left in them. And I've really enjoyed those books. So Vera Wong's Detective Agency and the Thursday Murder Clubs and the I think it's The Amazing Life of Frederick Fife. Like there's like so many best-selling books out there right now that have these beautiful stories of people at the end of their lives who are kind of having a second chapter. And that's what this book is. So I am now in the editing process of that where I'm poring over it and deciding that I am a terrible writer and can never do this again. Then I will let other people read it so they can tell me I'm a terrible writer and can never do this again, and then I will send it to my agent, and then she will say yay or nay, and it will go out into the world, hopefully to a home.
You are not a terrible writer. Um, we all need to hear some good, right? I know I've mentioned Instagram, but
Yeah.
so that people can follow along with these multi-year journeys, where should people go to connect with you, follow your life, your work, whatever you want? Where are you most active? Where do you actually want people to go?
I am most active on Instagram. It's just my name, Rachel McRady. When it gets time for book promotion, which is typically 6 months out and then the year after, I will fire up the old TikTok again.
Okay.
I'm not proud of it, I'm not happy about it, but it's actually an interesting place where you meet more strangers, than you would in other platforms, I find. So, like, people find the book more from TikTok versus, like, Instagram is like a community of people who are, like, following you consistently, and TikTok is more of like a, "Oh, I never heard about this before, let me look into that." And so both serve their purpose, but, um, I like Instagram the best. I'm there, and I'm also have a website, so rachelmccrady.com. Pretty advanced stuff.
Um, okay. Thank you so much for taking much more time than I had originally estimated.
Great. Thank you. I have
Um,
childcare. I'm living my life.
one final question for you to sign off with. Maybe you could provide some more sage parting words. Um, There is a very memorable quote by Joan Didion, who you might be familiar with.
I'm not gonna have any sage parting words that are better than Joan Didion, but
Um,
go on.
but Big John made me recall this quote. And the quote from Joan Didion is, "We tell ourselves stories in order to live." What kind of story do you tell yourself to live? And more interestingly, perhaps, what kind of story do you hope other people are telling themselves in order to live?
I mean, I think we're always kind of telling ourselves that we're important in some way, like that we matter. Um, and maybe we don't. It's very possible. Um, but you have to kind of believe that to put things into the world like stories or articles or music or anything. Um, and I mean, it's a pretty good story to tell. Like, if you matter and you can make any kind of difference to someone, like, that's a good thing. That's why we're here, is to hopefully lift one another up. Doesn't always feel that way. It often feels the opposite. But if we can make it through and have a positive impact on one person, two people, like that makes it pretty worth it, in my opinion. So that's the story I tell myself.
Amazing. I love it. I love it. And on that note, thank you for joining me. Um,
Thank you for
and
having me. This is I no one has talked to me for this long about myself, and I barely asked you a single question. So really that just shows you I was comfortable.
this is 100% all about you. Um, so
Gosh, run away.
thank you for everybody who listened. And please keep in touch with both of us, Rachel, much more than me. Please leave a comment, send us emails, visit our socials, her website. I don't have one of them things. Both of our contact informations will be found in the description below. So until next time, keep reading. Cheers.